suppose the last 2 years have been very interesting, let's say the least. And I suppose actually for us, we set up a brand 3 years ago for online mortgage applications. We've expanded our team now to 6. We've been dealing with DocuSign, with Zoom meetings. How do you think this impact, for the pandemic will last?
Yeah, that's the trillion-dollar question, perhaps. And I know we started our own online savings journey in the midst of the pandemic, and I'm sure both our businesses thought we were very prescient in terms of some of the moves we made, whether we admit that was anything to do with COVID or not. But just bringing us back to this kind of 10-year view, and again, I'll just kind of zoom in on the story that we've seen since the start of 2020. We had this big drop of where stock markets lost a third of their value in just 16 days, which was a record fall in terms of the speed. But what happened next was the best 50 days ever for the US stock market. So again, a very, very clear V-shaped recovery in a very short period of time. A couple of ups and downs along the way, but the story for stock markets since the start of 2020, and particularly since the lows of March 2020 in and around St. Patrick's Day, have been remarkable. And I think it's a very important point to note that stock market's always forward-looking. And as an investment manager, we're trying to figure out what parts of the market will do well based on what's happening and what might happen in the future. And that's a key point of what we try to do as an active investment manager. If I just take all the different parts of the stock market, so technology or real estate or financials or healthcare, the best performing ones were technology and consumer discretionary in 2020. And the sort of companies in there are capitalizing on work from home, play from home, and deliver to home. So they did really well, up these kind of plus 30, plus 25%. On the other end of the scale, energy performed the worst. There wasn't any global travel of any sorts. People were staying put, whether they wanted to or not. And the likes of real estate as well. There was issues with office space and office values and things like that. So even within the midst of a pandemic, there were opportunities for active investment managers. There was opportunities for people who kind of stuck with a plan. And if we just push that out a little bit further, we like to think that perhaps COVID and the pandemic didn't necessarily initiate some of the things we might see in the next decade, but they might have accelerated the importance of them. So if we look at, say, geopolitics, the potential for a new Cold War between the US and China, as opposed to the US and Russia. Tech wars, we see this rollout of 6G, and the likes of myself are still trying to get their heads around 5G, but 6G is already here in some parts of the world. And we've seen Huawei, one of the Chinese companies, be affected by political issues as well. And the idea of big government, I like this one. It's either a reassuring pat on the head or a kind of overbearing big brother, depending on people's personal leanings. But this kind of concept of big government and the reliance on the kind of government sectors has definitely emerged throughout the pandemic. And health as well. I know we're talking about investments today, but people are a lot more aware of the fragility of life and protecting their families and making sure they have certain kind of financial products in place for that as well. And just to kind of perhaps a little bit reversal in a good way of the work-life balance and focusing on different things. And again, a new consumer. We'll have people leaving second and third level education where going to the office will be the strange thing. And they're going to interact with businesses in a different way and things like that. So some of these will come to fruition, some won't, but they're some of the things we think about as an investment manager and try and capitalize from an economic perspective over the next number of years. So it's always fascinating. And as you said yourself, it was certainly interesting from an investment perspective over the last 2 years.